I'd like to call this July 8th council work session to order and a regular council meeting. Before we get started, we have Commissioner Rob Lockery here that wants to talk to council. They want to, go to the podium, please.
So, thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to be here again, and this time to talk about infrastructure. And there's really no action that's needed by council here, but we wanted to announce this tonight, present this to you. Actually, also ask for your help to promote it. A new pilot program that we have that has to do with helping small businesses and dealing with infrastructure issues. So I think everybody knows infrastructure is a big issue from the federal government down to the state government. It is in the county level, and it's probably most a challenge with local governments, and probably most acutely impacted or felt by small towns and boroughs who have old and aging infrastructure, and that becomes a challenge for a whole host of reasons. We also know it's a challenge for small businesses too, when they're trying to expand, to relocate, and everything that we're trying to do to promote downtowns, of which Bristol Borough is doing a phenomenal job of. We wanted to look at some ways that we could help small businesses. So we have some information that we wanted to present to you tonight. It's a pilot program that's being piloted in Bristol. We've set aside $50,000. I know it's not a lot of money, but we set aside $50,000 through our CDBG program that has been allocated to the Bucks County Industrial Development Authority. And Mary Smithson, who's the chair of the Industrial Development Authority, is here with me tonight. They run all of our economic, or most of our economic development programs that we have under Bucks to invest. And one of our strategies has been to invest in small businesses, in boroughs, in small towns. And so they're going to oversee this program. The details, I won't go into them too much, but essentially this is a program that's available for small businesses. And if they are looking specifically for lateral hookups and utility connections for property owners and small businesses in those properties, this program will provide a direct grant to that small business, that property owner. They'll just have to match it dollar for dollar. So if it's a $20,000 project, we'll have a $10,000 grant that's available if they match it a dollar for dollar. And we're trying to pilot this here in Bristol because we think there's need on Mill Street. We want to make investments like this on other main streets throughout the county. We've been working everywhere from New Hope to Percy and Sellersville and Quakertown, and obviously here in Bristol. And so this is sort of a new program that we wanted to launch and pilot here in Bristol, specifically for small businesses, specifically dealing with lateral connections, utilities, to help property owners and small businesses with some of the issues that they maybe may not know about when they move into a new building, or when they need to get the building renovated, or they're doing renovations and the upgrades that come with it. So this program will allow us to provide a grant, dollar for dollar match, up to $20,000. We've set aside $50,000 in this last CDBG program, and so if it's successful and we kind of get some of the wrinkles ironed out, we'll be able to fund this in the future and continue to expand it throughout the county. But we wanted to test it and pilot it here in Bristol because we thought that would be the best place to do it, and we know there's a lot going on in the downtown and on Mill Street. So Margie McKevitt, who's the director of our community and economic development at the county, I know most of you know who she is and have a connection with her. She oversees this program as a liaison to the Industrial Development Authority. We've got information here that we can leave with you tonight, share with you, and it's available, and we really want to begin to market it on Mill Street and work with the businesses that need it and are eligible for it. There's some, you're not free when you take government money, right? There's always a few caveats to it. So there's a job creation or a retention aspect to it. But I think it's worth those conditions and contingencies in terms of making the investment that we want to support with small businesses. So we wanted to announce that, let you know about it. I know it's the summertime, but as people are looking and making expansions and opportunities coming along, we wanted to make sure that we got this out to council and to the community here in Bristol, and just appreciate the opportunity to present this to you tonight.
So basically, the store owners or whoever is going to apply for this will deal directly with the county. Nothing will go through the borough.
Nothing will go through the borough. They will deal directly with the Bucks County Industrial Development Authority. They have to have an EIN, be a going, business concern, work with the property owner and/or the tenant if that's a situation in that building. There's an application. We're making it as simple as possible because on the back end for us, we have to deal with federal guidelines. So we're trying to make it really straightforward and simple up front so we can deal with it more efficiently on our side. But those businesses or property owners would apply directly to the Bucks County Industrial Development Authority.
Great. Well, I appreciate everything you do for Bristol and the commissioners. I mean, you've been very generous to this borough over the last, 5-10 years. So again, I want to personally thank you for all you do for us.
Thank
I have
you.
one question.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, I know we applied for a community development funding through the county. Do we know where we're at with that? Because I have a street that has 3 homes on it that needs to be paved, and we thought that money was going to come through so we could help that street be paved.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that that's through the Community Development Block Grant,
Yes.
CDBG program. In
Yes.
fact, this money was one of our projects that we set aside. What's the name of the project?
Railroad Avenue,
Yes.
West Railroad Avenue.
We approved a couple of projects for Bristol Borough. We just did it at our 2 meetings ago. So that one, yes, to answer your question, that's approved.
Okay, thank you, because one of them.
We're good news, huh?
Yeah, I like it.
I'm gonna quit while I'm
I
ahead.
like it. Thank you,
You're
thank
welcome.
you.
Rob, was it just sewer laterals, or could it be water? Is it water and sewer, or just sewer laterals?
We're trying to keep it to sewer laterals.
I just wasn't sure.
We put in a little caveat there that says, and/or other repairs, so if it's something that fits within the guidelines or parameters of the finances.
Okay. I'm just thinking sometime those jobs are done in tandem, and it might save some money rather than doing it in two steps, but.
Yeah, some of these costs could be a lot higher than what we've had, but at least it's a little bit of something to make an investment to help spur and leverage that private sector investment.
How will you notify everybody on, I guess we're dealing with just Mill Street?
So we have some handouts here that you could circulate. We'll continue to promote this through social media and our marketing and networking and, word of mouth for the business association, business owners and property owners on Mill Street. Just kind of handle it that way from that, through here out.
You can put it on your website, on your
Yeah,
website.
that's a good idea.
Well, I thank you for coming down and
You're
taking
welcome.
the
Thanks for letting
time
us come
and
on here.
again for all you do for Bristol.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll leave this information and then we got it. Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Thank you.
Make it one page.
Thank you.
So if anybody's interested in, or is watching the meeting, or if the press is covering anything, Mr. Dillon has the pamphlets here at Borough Hall. Stop in and pick one up. Okay, before we get started, I think I thought about this since our last meeting, and we need to bring stability back to this council chamber. And some of the problem is I'm not running the meeting the way I should be running the meeting, because I try to give everybody an opportunity, and I'm very lenient with people speaking. So I'm going to have the solicitor, I drafted up a letter while I was away, and I'm going to have him read it, because I think coming from the solicitor is better than me just reading the letter. So, Mr. Salerno, why don't you read the letter before we get started?
Thank you. Since becoming president of council some 16 years ago, I have conducted council meetings in a transparent and open manner. I have gone out of my way to allow council persons and residents to speak freely without limiting their time or content. Also, this council is proud to have placed the council public meetings on television where the citizens of Bristol Borough can access the meetings either live or on video. For the most part, this effort has worked. However, because of the conduct of one councilman, and some public speakers, during the last several meetings, I will now need to begin enforcing the procedural rules that have been in effect since 1983. The last several council meetings have been disrupted by one councilman who has verbally attacked other councilpersons, has become boisterous, and has actually gone into the public area of the council chambers in a manner that members of the public have felt threatened. Nevertheless, that conduct will now be curtailed immediately. Therefore, I will begin enforcing the following rules. Number one, all questions, comments, and statements will be directed to me as the chair of the meeting, whether from councilpersons or members of the public. Once addressed to me, I will decide whether to refer that comment or question to the other councilperson or appointed official. Therefore, I will not allow any councilperson to directly address or question other council members. Number two, in order to preserve the order of the council proceedings, I will no longer allow personal attacks against any of our council members or appointed officials by other councilpersons or members of the public. Number three, with reference to statements by members of the public, I would ask that you make your comments as succinct as possible and address your comments and questions to the chair. I will no longer allow any interrogation of council members by member of the public. If there are numerous questions or concerns, I would ask that the members of the public submit them to the borough manager in writing or by email, after which the borough manager will review and provide the appropriate response. Number four, though I am reluctant to impose any time limit on the members of the public, I would ask that the speaker get to the point as soon as possible and limit the comments to 3 to 5 minutes. Number five, I will limit comments and questions to matters before council or within council's jurisdiction. If a council person or a member of public have an issue with the police chief, then I would ask that they schedule a meeting with the police chief to discuss the matter. If a matter is not within the jurisdiction of council, then I will restrict the discussion. And number six, if a member of council or a member of the public is being disruptive, I will strike the gavel and ask for order. After the second time I strike the gavel, I will ask for a recess and will not reconvene the meeting until the disruption has been resolved. I am reluctant to have to impose these restrictions, but the conduct of certain individuals over the last several council meetings leave me no choice in order to restore order to these council meetings.
So just so you know, I really don't want to run this kind of meeting, but I feel that I have no other choice but to handle things this way. So everybody understands if you play sports, when a referee blows a whistle, everybody stops. So when I bang the gavel, I'm expecting everybody to conduct themselves in a positive manner, or I'm going to call a recess, and we're going to deal with that issue. I'm not going to have this council be embarrassed on TV anymore, or the public feel threatened by anything. So at that, everybody understands the rules.
I have a question about.
There is no question right now.
So you
It's
you
public,
understood the rules I'm
it's
asking.
public participation.
This is not public. participation. You
Anybody
understood
on
the
this
question.
side of the room want to speak on anything, go to the podium.
So it's censorship, is what it is.
I'm Jacqueline Marish. I live at 205 Pond Street here in Bristol.
Could you just speak a little bit louder?
I'm Jacqueline Marish. I live at 205 Pond Street here in Bristol. I have two issues. The first one does not need a response. It is simply a statement I wish to make. I can only speak for a few Grundy residents because the majority of them only recently have been finding out about the very thoughtful gesture some community members had planned as a thank you dinner for the Grundy residents who came out to vote on primary election day. The dinner was scheduled for June 12th with all preparations, including cleanup, prearranged. Although nothing was asked of nor needed from the Grundy Residence Council, the dinner did not happen because one member of the 13-member Residence Council was not able to attend. The dinner was not about one person. It was about the 120-plus residents from Grundy who did turn out to vote. The dinner was being graciously given to recognize that the residents mattered, they were important, they counted as vital Bristol citizens. Although it was not about one person, it turned out that one person took precedence over the 120-plus voting Grundy residents. Last week, one of the Grundy Resident Council members said to me, "So, you're figuring out how things work here." So I'm speaking on behalf of the residents who now know about the dinner that didn't happen. I'm expressing our gratitude to those community residents, our thank you for acknowledging that we counted, we mattered, we're important, if only to you. My next statements are going to ask for a sort of request. It has already been answered, but I feel the need to address this anyway. The Grundy Library has a new book titled Call Them by Their True Names. It's written by Rebecca Solnit. I thought it was a good title to address this issue. Ms. Solnit proposes that, quote, calling things by their true names cuts through the lies that excuse, buffer, muddle, disguise inaction and indifference. Calling something by its true name can act like a diagnosis. Once you know what you're dealing with, you are far better prepared to know what you can do about it. Truth language must be used as the only form of information and the only form of true citizen democracy. A pattern of embarrassment and disgust has developed, which needs to be stopped. I understand it has just been stopped, but you can only be embarrassed and disgusted when you expect better. Let me repeat that because it's important. You can only be embarrassed and disgusted when you expect better. I expect better. I expect council to recognize and implement its power to limit and contain personal attacks, emotional outbursts, disruptions, preventing this council to function for the benefit of residents, not angry agitators. Securing Bristol's future rests on the success of this council's capacity to continue as an efficient team committed to improving Bristol's renaissance. Moving forward with long-term plans demands a civility whereby policies can be debated with personal attacks and emotional outbursts not evident. Personal attacks, emotional outbursts, agitating behaviors are intentional, deliberate. Adults know this. Adults pursuing an intentional, disruptive goal know what they are doing. Adults who are witnessing these behaviors also know what they are doing. Doing nothing about a person's intense, unprovoked anger can have them think their behavior is legitimate. Doing nothing invites more emotional outbursts. When this behavior becomes routine, it develops into a habit. This must not be normalized. The June 10th meeting honoring Normandy Bristolians and firefighters serving for 50 years was done with dignity and civility. The Borough Council functioned in a dignified and civil manner. Although the Borough Council may or perhaps doesn't follow Robert's Rules of Order, but I believe they do, and I know they do, Robert's Rules is the standard outlining proper procedures for organized societies and groups. I am speaking to request, although I am now thanking also, that the council uses Robert's rules to control members who demonstrate low personal self-control and high emotional volatility. Robert's Rules has a chapter relevant to dealing with offenses in a meeting. I urge this council to inform all members of this chapter, which begins on page 643 and is titled Disciplinary Procedures. And it authorizes any member of the council to, quote, call a member to order, end quote, if a member is, quote, disturbing the well-being of the organization or hampering it in its work. Neither council members nor the general public should use council meetings as a browbeating stage. So many people are committed to securing Bristol's future as a thriving civil community, to have it shadowed by shallow, embarrassing, verbal vomit. I expect better and request this council to return to civil discourse. Members can disagree on policy issues without resorting to disgusting behavior and personal attacks. Enough. This must not be normalized. And so I now thank you for the new rules that are in place. It's as though either you were reading my mind or I was reading yours. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else on this side of the room would like to speak on anything? Anybody on this side of the room want to go to the podium, state your name and address?
My name's Rich Hughes. I live on Cleveland Street in Bristol Borough. I'm here just to clarify one thing and then ask the President another one. I want to clarify, I was informed,
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Rich.
I was informed that there was no fire police in Bristol Borough. I'm not pointing fingers, I'm not mentioning names. I just want everybody to know there is fire police in Bristol Borough. Right now we have 6 active, and there are others, but as far as active ones, there's only 6. I just wanted to clarify that statement. Second of all, the fire police are broke. We need 10 batteries for our radios. So to do our job professionally, and more important, safely, so we can communicate amongst each other, we have to get these 10 batteries. And we shopped around, and the cheapest they are is like $50 each. Just wondering if there's any way the borough or council can help, or...
We'll take that into consideration, but I think that the fire chief and the mayor, who this organization falls under, am I correct?
Actually,
I don't know.
Yeah, no, well, there's kind of a joint depending on the event, right? In some cases, they would come under the fire department. They all belong to a fire company. In some cases, in emergencies, they belong to the fire department. For like the ethnic celebration days and all, they would come under the police department guidance. But the budget has $1,000 in it for fire police. It's just that I wasn't aware they needed 10 batteries. I'm sure if they get that information, they get it to me, we'll get it to Mr. Dillon, and it can be taken care of.
I don't think there's an issue of buying the batteries as long as the 2 chiefs feel that it's necessary. I don't think any member of council is going to not pay $500 to give you guys batteries.
I appreciate that.
All right, so...
Yes. So I have to give Herbie notice first, right?
Herbie will-
Give me the information, and I'll get with Mr. Dillon, and we'll get it taken care of.
Okay, thank you.
All right?
Yep, thank you.
Anybody else on this side of the room want to speak on anything? Podium, state your name and address.
Good evening, Ken Bixler, Cleveland Street. First of all, are there any agendas printed up this month, or they weren't out at the door last month?
Can't answer that.
Any,
Is there any agendas out there?
No,
there's none out there, but there's,
no, just items for consideration for council, like they do at the work session. There's no agendas out for the work session. There may be some items that the council may elect to vote on later. So the answer is no.
okay, but this is a combination meeting, right? Work session and
Yes.
council meeting?
Yes.
But there's no agendas, okay. And you may add some items to vote on, you said, Mr. Dillon? They
Maybe
may?
one item that we want to vote on tonight that I'll explain to council.
Okay, I did see a copy of the agenda. I don't have it personally, but, and I see that the firehouse vote is not happening this evening, correct?
Correct.
Is that being postponed another month?
We don't know.
Not sure?
Let me just explain to you about the fire companies. The last time we met, we agreed at the fire board meeting with all the fire companies present that we would release all the funding to the 4 companies that they had coming, so they didn't have to wait for their money. The only money that was not released was the 5th share. How that 5th share is going to get divided has not been determined yet. So it's either going to get, there may be a portion of it taken away every year, it may be all taken away. We're trying to work it out where everybody comes out of this meeting with some kind of an agreement. So it's really not going to be voted on until this, it could be a few months before we get this
So
resolved.
eventually, council will vote on it.
Eventually, council will vote on it with the understanding that we have all 5 companies in agreement with whatever this agreement is. And if we can't come to an agreement, then council will vote on going from 5 to 4 or keeping it at 5.
Okay. All right.
Put a time limit on it, I can't tell you when it's going to be.
Appreciate that. One thing I wanted to just put out there was, it was very nice last month of council and the mayor to recognize the 2 World War II vets that participated in D-Day, and also the 2 firemen that had 50-plus years of service. That was very nice. Thank you for doing that. I also want to thank Councilman Pezza and Councilman Devine for last month, for talking, bringing up the issue or commenting about the issue about the fire companies. Like you said, that's in limbo right now. Even yourself and Councilman Riccio mentioned, you're in favor of maybe a center location in town to bring all the fire companies together. But like Councilman Devine, touched on, like you have a firehouse in the north end, one in the south end, like it's number 3s, number 2s. If you can combine forces, combine, resources, funding, et cetera. Whether it's that or in the center of town, whatever. Now, Councilman Pezza stated last month, the council needs to be part of the process. He said they need to be part of the process, and which I agree, because if you don't mind, this has been going on.
I'm trying to figure out, can you get to the point?
Yeah, well, here's what I'm getting at. Here's what I'm concerned about. This has been going on for a while. It comes up every few years. Mayor Saxton, Chief Slack want to change the funding formula, all right, every few years. I want to believe that they want to do the right thing. Now, if you can ask the mayor, how many years has Mr. Saxton been mayor?
Kenny, just,
This is important
how
to
many
me.
he's been mayor the last couple of years?
What's that?
He's been here a couple of years as
You've been
mayor.
mayor for a couple of year? No, you've been mayor, what, 2, 3 terms? How many terms?
Don't
You
answer.
gotta get to the point.
My point is, at last month's meeting, the mayor said that it's not as easy as just selling the equipment, like Councilman Devine said, blah, blah, blah. Well, Stations 25 and 53 were able to come to an agreement, sell some of their assets, combine forces. And I've been hearing for years that those 2 companies are double dipping. All right, correct?
I suggest you do
Yeah.
is go to a fire board meeting.
Right.
Because council really is trying to work this out, in a professional manner, and nobody's trying to hurt anybody. And as far as telling people what station you need to go, that's not our decision. They're all, you notice, they're all independent fire companies.
I heard you say that last
All
month.
have their
But you
own
also,
chiefs.
you're the council that's going to vote on the funding. You're the ones that are going to make the last decision, okay, on that. And as far as, like the mayor said about, I forget how, disenfranchising them, I forget the verbiage that he uses last month as far as taking the status away from a fire company, that the council and mayor have the power to do that. So I'm concerned that it's been going on for many years.
We're trying to get it resolved.
And I hope so. I hope we can get it resolved. And one of the things that concerned me that the mayor said last month, he agreed with me in the beginning of the meeting that, membership is down. He used the example of
We
the
know
dying
all
on the
that.
vines.
We know all that.
Right,
We know
right.
manpower.
But-
So why don't you get to the point? I'm not
I'm-
going to have you sit here.
All right, no, I know, but when I was, that was during public participation. When I was at the meeting, the mayor said it's unfair, or you can't compare the borough with the township, even though the borough's a lot, well.
You want to talk to the mayor after the meeting, why don't you do that?
Okay.
All right?
We can do
Because
that.
I'm not going to sit
All right,
here.
all right, that's
and
fine.
All right?
That's fine, I'll do that. Is that okay, Mr. Mayor?
Questions?
All right, thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, wait, I have one more thing. And forgive me, because the resident of the Grundy Tower, she was speaking very softly. Who did she say was going to fund the dinner for the residents that came out to vote?
I have no idea.
You don't know?
She didn't say.
She didn't
What's
say.
that?
She didn't say.
She didn't say. Okay, then I couldn't hear her well, that's what I was wondering. Okay, all right, the last thing I just wanted to say is, last month, it was very disappointing that the council majority voted to hire someone, once again, without advertising the position. Okay? I remember I was at the meeting a couple years ago when Councilman Pezza made a public statement.
All right, let me just
What?
stop you
Go
there.
ahead, stop me.
Let me stop you there. First of all, before we even walked into this council chamber, it's a part-time position, and council really didn't need to vote on it. Mr. Gerard in the back room said, why are we even voting on this? It's the manager's decision. And I said, I'd rather have everybody agree on it or disagree than have the manager make this decision. So really, the manager could have just hired a part-time person.
Well, that's what,
Okay.
is that, so you're saying it
So-
only applies to full-time positions, that has to be advertised?
As far as I'm concerned.
Is that as far as you're concerned?
Yeah.
Is that right, Mr. Solicitor?
Have him make his comment. and that's
All
it.
right, can you ask the solicitor if that's correct?
No.
I'm not having you ask anybody questions. All
Okay.
right?
So I just-
gave you my answer. If I'm
All right.
wrong, then I'm wrong.
No, I'm just saying, I just remember, even like Mr. Pezza said, if there need be for the manager to hire somebody in a pinch until you have the opportunity to vote, but I don't see it happening. I just see it over and over.
Thank you for your comment.
So you're saying because
I'm only saying
you're
what
not
Mr.
following the
Gerard
process.
said in the back room.
I'm sorry?
I'm only repeating what Mr. Gerard said in the back room.
Mr. Gerard said that, why are we voting on this? Because it's a
Right.
part-time position?
Mr.
It
Gerard,
was a question to the general counsel.
right.
Because when I questioned about the last building inspector, I was told as long as he's part-time, it's Mr. Dillon's decision, so I was just confirming.
Same
that.
thing I thought. So, okay, we answered your question. You have anything else?
That's it.
All right, you're done.
Thank you.
Anybody else on this side of the room? That ends public participation. Herbie, what do you have?
Just two things. One is, we've ordered the 300 smoke alarms. We're waiting for the verification of the bank information from the manufacturer, and as soon as we verify that, we'll make an electronic transfer of funds, and within a week, we'll have the smoke alarms. Second thing I just want to mention, the end of June, the police, the Bucks County Rescue Squad, the fire company QRS, and Goodwill Hose Company Number 3 responded to a cardiac arrest of a 50-year-old. As a result of the outstanding professional effort of those involved, the person was successfully resuscitated. It was a true team effort that led to this save. So it's really, that's some good news.
Any questions for the fire chief? Chief?
Celtic Day and First Friday resulted in a few calls, however, mostly uneventful. As you all know, very large crowds, but it was great days. We're waiting for the reconstruction to be completed on the Route 13 fatal accident, the unfortunate event. We'd just like to publicly thank the Bristol Township Traffic Safety Unit for their assistance in this investigation. There's several new PA laws out there requiring the redevelopment of some of our policies. It's also hitting our workload because of the way Pennsylvania is adjusting prevention of abuse orders and the seizure of firearms during those incidents, which is a whole new process for the state. And lastly, we had some speed complaints up on Green Lane. We've been very aggressive up there and Farragut also, trying to do the best we can with the resources we have. That's all I have.
Any questions for the chief? Greg?
It's more of a statement than a question, but I just want to, again, and I know we've said this a number of times, but congratulate you and your officers on the fantastic job that they do, especially the presence that they have on First Friday and Celtic Day and all those other days. I mean, you know, I think we lose sight of sometimes how much triage is going on behind the scenes, in the sense of these guys are running all over town all day long, and they really put a very stable face on Bristol Borough when these events where tens of thousands now, it seems like sometimes people from out of town are there. And it really is a comfort, I know, to a lot of the residents and to a lot of the business owners. And, you know, your officers, I think, have really taken a tremendous step forward with their community engagement. They just do a really fantastic job. And I know, in just, you know, being a business owner, their responses to our requests and questions and concerns, or whether it be Detective Davis, that I'm also currently working with, or just a response. They've just been really, really great, very professional. Not that they weren't before, but it's just, I think, much more noticeable under your leadership. And I do know that just in having friendly conversations, you know, we know what Facebook can be like, whether it be for council members or police officers or whoever it might be. I do know that one thing that I think is a very fair concern that some officers seem to have, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it seems like a lot of people think when something happens that they just assume that someone else called the police. And because they assume that someone else called the police and the police don't respond, they're thinking, well, the police just aren't responding. When what's really happening is that no one is calling the police. Do you see that as a routine issue?
I've seen it happen more than once. Unfortunately, people feel that social media is a reporting statute, and it's really not. And that's, it does more harm than good in any emergency situation or criminal situation. Number one, for the victim itself, because we don't initially, like you said, get the report, because even when it comes down to the lost dog, hey, who's the lost dog on German Shepherd on Farragut Avenue? And they put it on Facebook instead of calling our ACO, who might grab the dog instead of before it's hit.
Right.
So putting that in a nutshell, the way you just explained it, is very much correct. And also, a lot of times by going to social media first, you're adding more to the fire. I can go on for hours about how Facebook drives us sometimes, and we really have to push against that. I know I've had several conversations with council members about this, but we can't be Facebook-driven policing, and we definitely will never be Facebook-driven response. But you're correct, and thank you for your comments.
Yep, thank you.
Anybody else for the chief?
I wanted to thank you for the putting the sign up on Green Lane, and also the presence, the police presence there has been incredible, really good. And I've noticed that it has slowed down the speed somewhat. I was on Radcliffe Street yesterday driving, and I was going 25 miles an hour, and somebody was right on my butt, and I put my signal on, and I turned, you know, parked, and that person just shot out like crazy. I don't understand why they think that they can drive that fast there. It's like a speedway.
Well, it's a shame, because unfortunately we can't raise the drivers, we can only enforce the laws.
I know, but I want to thank you
I have
for...
to thank, I think, Councilman Quattrochi's efforts on what he did, and when that takes place on Radcliffe, I think that's going to extremely help.
I was down the other end, all the way
Right.
down.
Well, that's the other thing also, and I talked to Mr. Dillon about this last weekend, and I'll bring it up, and I bring it up every year. We are, again, the only state in the United States that doesn't allow law enforcement to use radar, and we can pretty much solve this problem in about a week if they would give us the tools to do our job. Having said that.
But thank you again
Thank you.
for Green Lane, I really appreciate that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do. I have a statement. I know, you know, the borough police are doing everything they can, and we've always had this problem of speeding in this town, especially when the weather's warm. Maybe not only when the weather's warm, but in the last 3 weeks, we've had 2 pretty bad accidents on Bath Street. One was at 6 o'clock in the morning when a bunch of parked cars were hit, and 2 of the cars were totaled. And the other one was the other day, 2 young people hit some parked cars. If it wasn't for the parked cars, I think they would have took out a few kids. My concern is the speed. I think on Bath, and I know it's a state highway, but I think we have a 35 per hour speed limit on Bath Street. Is there any way we could revisit that and see if maybe it's just too fast?
I'll work with Mr. Dillon to see if we can contact PennDOT and see what they'll do for us.
Okay.
I really don't know. A lot has to do with accident data
Okay.
and reportable accident data. What I mean by that is it has to be, with the state of Pennsylvania, either an injury or a vehicle has to be towed. So a lot of times those mirror hits and so on and so forth, they don't even want to consider.
Well, in the last 3 weeks, 4 vehicles.
Yeah, I understand what
Yeah.
happened the last, we're all right
And
now.
Officer Hankinson was great, 6 o'clock in the morning, you know, and like I said, it was, you know, it hit the one car, the car hit the other, it just went down the street. But then with the kids the other day, it really scared me.
Sure.
Because if it wasn't for the truck where it was parked, which ended up, by the way, on the other side of the street, some of the kids probably would have been taken out, and they're little kids. They play there all the time. They don't have the access of having a backyard or whatever, and they shouldn't have to. If they want to play in front of their house, they should be able to. So
That street is extremely, extremely challenging to enforce speed on.
yes, it is.
Because it's really
It
no
is.
way, in the way the state of Pennsylvania allows us to do it, can we do it because of.
Right.
So, again, I would ask you, in your position, to really, you know, we had the commissioner here before and stuff like that. We got to get this through.
Yes,
It's
I mean,
ridiculous.
25 years I've been on that street, and honestly, at one time, I wanted to take my daughter's big-size Barbie and just throw it out there to slow people down, to scare the crap out of
Or
them.
beach balls or.
But, you know, I mean, it's just really bad, and I think it's, after what I've seen in the last 3 weeks, it's even worse. So,
I'm not going to disagree.
and that's all I have for him.
Anybody else for the chief? Mayor, what do you have?
A couple things, following up, the chief was talking about, I think it was last week or the week before, the Senate did pass the radar bill. It's now sent to the State House, and it's in committee. So that's the first in itself, it's a step in the right direction. Hopefully it gets through the House and they can come to an agreement on the radar. And Senator Thomason, I reached out to him and he voted for radar. Also, too, gone over some numbers with the chief. 2016 to 2018, 233 abandoned vehicles were dealt with by the Borough Police Department. That's 233 from 2016 through 2018. 3 years prior to that, it was 94. So we're out there. We know that people are dumping cars here, and we're picking up on them pretty quick, but also, too, some of our residents are leaving some vehicles out there. Abandoned vehicles, 45 addressed so far this year, and we're only in June. So I know that's a concern with, you know, some of our members of council, and we're doing everything that we can. I think last month we did report that bike patrols have been out when our staffing allows it. We're in the vacation period where we have a lot of officers off, plus we have 2 officers out on injured duty, so we're a little short. Some good news, some bad news. Good news for part-time Officer Harris. He came out number 1 in Yardley patrolman exam. Could be bad news for us if they hire him. He's probably one of our longest tenured part-timers. On Friday, July 19th, it'll be Bristol Borough Movie Night, the Peanuts movie. It's sponsored by the Academic Oversight Committee, 21st Century Learning Centers, partnering with the Bristol Borough School District, Bristol Borough Council, in putting this on at the wharf. Starts about 7 o'clock, or movies at dusk, as soon as it gets dark enough that you can see the movie screen. All residents of Bristol Borough are invited. Cost is free. You also get a free popcorn, free drink, and a free movie.
And what's the date?
July 19th, Friday, July 19th. And we generally get around anywhere between 400 and 600 people. Also, too, I think we get a lot of publicity out of it. All the diners at the King George and the people that are down there, they see these movies going on and they say, "Oh, what a great thing, it's wonderful, it's free. Bristol Borough is great," which we all know. Also, too, the Grundy Foundation is doing the Moon Apollo 11 after 50 years. It'll be held at July 11th from 5:30 to 8 o'clock at Snyder Girardi. They're going to have Derek Pitts, one of the Philadelphia's most passionate science educators and sought-after speakers. He's an integral part of the Franklin Institute. That's by tickets only. I think you got to go today or tomorrow to the library if you want tickets. They have limited seating. I know last month we talked about Jazz on the River with the Advisory and Oversight Committee, and again with the parting with the borough and the school district. It was a big success, about 270 people. As the chief pointed out, we had, no problems with that or Celtic Day, which followed. The summer program started on July 1st. Again, the school district, the borough council, and the oversight committee. I know there was some concern about not a lot going on in town, but we do have baseball, we have softball. On the elementary school, it's a summer stream camp. Field trips to Silver Lake Nature Center, Snipes Farm, Grundy walking trip, Marsh walking trip, Peace Center, family involvement, staff kickball, relays, Aladdin performance. So there's a lot going on there. For the middle school and high school, we have credit recovery, which when we went to school was called summer school. Today they can do it on a computer with one teacher can do multiple grades. That's something that the oversight committee has purchased that software a couple years ago. History and culture, various trips to Bucks County historical sites, work readiness, student employment, life skills, culminating with trip to Sesame Place for job inquiries, garden club, trips to Philadelphia Art Museum, Tyler State Park, college exploration camp. So there are a lot of things going on for our kids in town. Also, too, I'll put these up. This is the 8th grade Bon Voyage trip on the A.J. Mural, the 8th grade students at St. Mark's. It's that oyster schooner that used to be parked over in Burlington, and they take the kids out and teach them all about sailing and environment on the river. And this one is the Writer's Voice. Is another program that the kids go away and they learn about leadership skills, about poetry, about art. And the kids in here, these are all their writings and their pictures and so forth. So I'll put them over there. I know we're trying to move along, but I think that's... The other thing is the Grundy Library is open every day. There's programs there for your kids at all ages. You can go there, and I'll set these up over here if anybody'd like to see them after the meeting. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. If I may, a couple simple, non-confrontational comments to Mr. Dillon, please. I got a couple complaints, Jim, from Beaver Street and New Buckley. There's an alley behind the post office that's getting overgrown big time. I know everybody's busy, it's not an emergency, but if you have George take a look at that for me, please. Thank you for doing some repair work on Plum Street. And if I could ask you to have George keep an eye on Plum Street, especially from Pine Street to Spruce Street. I constantly get complaints about that. And also, I've been asking about that lot behind the school. I was talking to Mr. Riccio, who's rehabbing 243 Buckley Street, and I said, man, it'd be nice if we could get that open up. And he mentioned to me, according to his plot plan that he thought that maybe some of that or all that might belong to the borough. So that might give you a lead to see who owns that, and maybe we could get just get the construction debris that they're throwing over there and the concrete. It would clean that area up. If you could do that for me, I'd appreciate it. And that's all I got.
Mr. Catroci.
After last month's meeting, which was very well received and it was a remarkable event, I met an attorney who said that we missed Tony Mandio. And Tony was born and raised in Bristol, and as a teenager he enlisted in the Army and served as a paratrooper and pathfinder for the 82nd Airborne Division. After his discharge, he attended Temple University Law School. He joined the Bristol firm of Eastman, Begley, and Fulham, which later became Begley, Carlin, Mandio. He served many private and commercial clients here in the Bristol area, including First Federal Savings and Loan, and he served for over 48 years as a solicitor of the Bristol Borough School District. So I felt that needed to be mentioned, and it was, I know a lot of effort was put out there to try to find everybody we could, but being we missed one, I just wanted to give you an update on that today. With the PennDOT, I just wanted to go into this PennDOT painting of the Mill Street and Ratcliffe Street. The process started in the fall when my neighbors, Mike and Mary Ann Lolly, had 2 cars totaled in an accident on a Saturday afternoon. Senator Tommy Tomlinson's office reached out to PennDOT and the borough to see what could be done to make this area safer. I joined in the conference call and volunteered to offer my assistance. I have had 6 mirrors taken off my cars there, had 2 cars totaled. But more importantly, my mother-in-law was killed there. So I volunteered to work with PennDOT. I met with Vince Sorbonne from PennDOT several times, and after several studies, it was recommended that the road be lined, hash marks be painted on the corners, and 25-mile-per-hour signs be painted on the road. The white lines on the parking side have several purposes. It marks the parking area, but more importantly now, PennDOT uses them as the markers for the guidance systems in the newer cars. And when I talked to PennDOT about that, I said, are these just, we're not driving around in Mercedes. And he said, all the cars today, even your, most economical car, the newer ones have these guidance systems, or soon they will have them. And so that's why the state's preparing, they're thinking ahead of time getting this done. But also, he said there's a psychological effect, and many people, when I've explained it to them, they now agree that the road looks, when you have these lines out there, the road looks narrower, and people tend to go slower when they're going down the street. And it's even most noticeable when you get down to the old Total Warehouse area where it's wide open, and you see these lines there, and it still kind of brings you into perspective. The hash marks at the corners, Vince noticed those, and he said people in town park really close to the corners, and that's a real safety issue because then you can't see, and it's always obvious when there's an accident or where the horns are blowing at Penn Street or Franklin Street. So these hash marks are a safety measure, and there's 12 markings on the streets there where it says 25 mph on both sides of the street, along with a marking for the curve at before St. Mark's Church. It says slow, and there's a curve mark there. And this was all done at no cost to the borough. The borough's agreed to maintain these markings. PennDOT's contractor, Guide Mark, was very good. I heard a lot of positive comments. They were very accommodating and very safety conscious. And I just wanted to publicly thank Vince Sorbonne, the traffic safety manager, and Larry Kubley, who's also a PennDOT traffic control specialist, Senator Tommy Tomlinson, and Michelle Sutter, and Ryan Stoklis, his chief of staff, and also Kurt and Amanda of Gilmore Associates for merging this project into the project with the Canal's End and the widening there of that and the work up on Mill Street. And they were very accommodating, and we were able to get this project done in a timely fashion and at no cost to the borough. And I just want to add something. We talk about social media. You know, people make comments on social media, some who sit in this room, and it has nothing to do with really what's going on. I didn't get anything from PennDOT for doing this. I didn't give anything to PennDOT to get it done. You know, I did it because every time my wife walks out the door, you know, she's reminded of what happens on Rackham Street. And she panics every time there's somebody speeding down. So the people that make those kind of comments, if you have an issue with me, you know, give it to me. Don't put it out there where I got to have my family upset by it. It's not fair. They didn't do anything, you know, that deserves that.
Lou, how would you feel if somebody blamed you for the...
Tony, you're out of order.
I'm just asking, Lou.
Look, you don't ask any more questions
Oh,
anyway.
got you.
I don't even understand it anyway. Just on a little positive note, I'm down the shore, I'm in a hardware store, and somebody sees my shirt, had Bristol on it. And they said, "You live in Bristol?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, we were there a couple weeks ago. There was a little bar, there was an island out front with a memorial." And I said, "Oh, Finney McGee's." He said, "Yeah, that was the name of the place." He said, "You really got a nice town." I said, "Well, thank you." So the word gets out there. When people see our town, you know, they appreciate it. Sometimes people here don't appreciate what we have, but that's another issue. Thank you.
Louis, I just want to thank you for all the time you put in. I know that project, you took the ball, you ran with it, and the project came out great. To a point where the manager is now getting prices to do from Mill Street to the end of Farragut Avenue the same way, to see if we could slow cars down there and maybe down Wilson Avenue. So it may not be able to be done this year, but we're going to try to put that in our budget, because I think this, looking at the 25 mile an hour and the lines, I think it was a great project. So to tailor onto this, when I said earlier about adding something to the agenda, we got a letter that there's a multi-mogul grant application that's due July 31st. So we have some information that we could apply for $476,000. The match is 204, and a lot of times we find ways to match that without using borough money. So I'm going to ask that we add this to the agenda tonight to apply for, and let's see what happens. So that was the one thing I wanted to add to the agenda. So there is no set agenda tonight. Am I correct? This is
just the items that are listed.
So I want to make this an agenda item to be voted on when we get into the voting part of this meeting. The other thing is I like to discuss, and I know I'm out of order, but we discussed many times about the basketball courts here in Bristol. I've been talking to some people, different funding options, and there may be an option to get some money to redo these courts. But I'm really thinking I would like to reach out to a couple school board members, and maybe let's do this right. Maybe we should move the courts up on the Buckley and Beaver. They have all that ground. Maybe we could put 6 or 8 courts in over there. If we're going to pay the blacktop, a big area, let's maybe do it right where we really can do this something special that we're going to leave here for a long time. and turn the rest of this into more community gardens and things for people in town to use. So I just want to give you an update that I am working on trying to do something with the courts. Greg?
Can I just say one thing? And just as of late, I came to know this. My friend has a connection with the Sixers. It's a weird old connection. But there is, just as you're looking, and if you want me to send you anything that I have on it, the Sixers actually do some community projects as well. There are qualifications that need to be met. I don't know if we meet them or not, but they certainly try to help out with the development of some of those basketball courts too.
And if you could run with it,
Yeah.
whatever you could do.
I'll send you whatever I can find out.
Mr. Ricchio?
The new homes that are being built on Radcliffe Street, someone stopped me at Home Depot and he said there was no activity going on for the last month, month and a half. Has that project stalled? Or?
The problem with the project, from what the borough understands, is that there's a DEP not issued. There were forms that needed to be filled out, that were never filled out through the trustees from the bank and the builder. So the DEP talked to the borough, I think, last week, and said that everything's now been submitted, and hopefully within the next 2 to 3 weeks, they will issue a go-ahead again on the project. So they basically stopped the project until this paperwork was resolved.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
At the military monument, I was told today that the sprinkler system wasn't working. I contacted George Waldron, and he said by tomorrow morning it'll be working. People were concerned because the grass was starting to get a little brown. So that will be taken care of. Also, over the weekend, I was at the mountains, and I saw pictures of servicemen on banners. Now, I'm not sure if they were killed in the line of duty or what, but I thought maybe we could look into it and maybe put pictures of people from Bristol Borough that were in the war, that did die at war, or had gotten injured or something like that. So I wanted to talk to Bill Pezza about it, and maybe we could, put those banners up around town, maybe near the monument, maybe, they were on poles, and it was really nice to see that. Very patriotic, and they were done beautifully. I took pictures of it, so I do have pictures, and, I think we could, like I said, look into it. And I want to thank Lou, especially because you said about the cars having the motion. That was a great idea. Thank you very much. No, I know, but that was great foresight in there, Thank you. That's all I have.
I would like to address a few things. First of all, to Mr. Bixler's point. Mr. Bixler is correct, by the way. I did say that. I did say that on the floor about saying that we should post all jobs. I'm a human being, and I have to be 100% honest with you. I didn't quite remember it in that context, and as you had mentioned it, and as I've seen some other things, and I kind of went back and looked at myself, I did say that. And I think every once in a while it's important for us to be honest about the mistakes that we might make in that circumstance. And to that point, this is not about the person in the job, this is about the point that you're making insofar as the point that I had made before, that we should post jobs. I said it, and I shouldn't have backed away from that, and I apologize for that. That said, I did see this as some progress because there was this, again, to Mr. Gerard's point, there had been this long-standing understanding that when it came to part-time things, we left it to the discretion of the borough manager, which I have every confidence in the world of the borough manager, and generally speaking, I do feel comfortable with that. This was an agenda item. I thought that was a little bit of progress in the sense of that we were publicly speaking to it and voting on it, but your point is correct. And to that point, back to kind of the discussion about civility and people that we know and where we are. I don't want to discount this idea of government, because what we do is very, very important. But I also think it's a really dangerous precedent in a town as small as this to discount personal relationships and understandings of each other at the expense of, or I should say, to black and white, say government is this way, and we can just put aside all of our personal relationships. Because I don't think that's real. I don't think that's realistic. I don't think that's productive. I think we should use our understanding and knowledge of each other and our families to know where people are coming from. I think we should err on the side of believing people as opposed to wanting to believe that there is some sort of conspiracy in the air. Whoever outrageously said that Mr. Catroci was going to get paid for some sort of PennDOT project, I don't know what that is, but I can tell you that I knew Mrs. Catroci's mother very well. I saw her every day of my life. It's not a secret that Vince is my best friend, and I know what they went through there, and I thought it was completely obvious the motives that Mr. Catroci had when he was doing that. And that's just an example. That's just an example. And for those of us that have known each other forever, we know each other's families, we know each other's backgrounds. I don't understand this climate of conspiracy theory, Facebook 101, what's going on in this town. I just don't understand it. And I cannot support Mr. DiGiuseppe's decision enough to do what he feels like needs to be done to follow Robert's Rules of Order and to make sure that and by the way, I'm included. I am not innocent from any of this stuff. I've exploded just like anybody else has on this floor, and I think this hopefully is a time where we kind of are a little introspective and think about that as we move forward. So that's all I have.
Mr. Devine.
Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to thank Mr. Pezza. I can cross that off my list. And it is important that we kind of recognize things that we've said or things that we've done, right? We're all human. We've all said things or done things that we regret. But I appreciate that he's able to tell Mr. Bixler, yeah, I did bring that up. And, and I apologize for not following through it, because that was a very important thing. Because with that job, we discussed it. I thought when he brought up it was a great idea. And I think that all those things that we do, open, transparent, a hiring process that will be open and transparent, is great for everybody, because it allows people to put their applications in for the jobs who may be more qualified than just people when they keep it hush-hush and then just try to sneak it in with, underneath everybody's nose. So I do appreciate that, Mr. Pezza. The second thing I want to talk about is, we want to create civility, but again, it's just comical that it comes from our council president talking about civility, when even as he says it, the first thing is, it seems like it only depends if you support Mr. DiGiuseppe, you get more leeway at that podium. If you do not support Mr. DiGiuseppe, you get less leeway. And I'll give you an example, just perfect today. The young lady that was at the Grundy Tower, she came up and that was at least a 9, 10, 11-minute speech, never was interrupted. Mr. Bixler goes up there, and he's just asking questions, and he is machine gun down everything. Well, can you get to the point? Can you get to the point?
I was trying.
I know, wait a second. I'm just getting to my point. And then he ends, when he's finished, Mr. DiGiuseppe ends with it, "You're done." Right? Like, how is that civility? Like, I'm not going to be okay with that just because he's the council president, right? Civility, it starts from the top. So the next part is, who's going to hold the council president accountable? Am I going to be able to use my water as a gavel when he gets out of order and acts up? Or when he does things to embarrass residents at the podium? Who is going to hold him accountable? Because looking around this room, nobody will. Nobody holds him accountable. And when I ask questions, for some reason, I'm the bad guy. And I don't understand why. To me, That's why we're elected. I'm not here to be everyone's friend. I'm here for the residents of my ward and the borough. That's it, period. So, with that said, we'll call that, and to me, the whole thing is censorship. That's what it reminds me of. It's just like censorship. We don't live in Mayberry. People are going to have emotions. They're going to talk about things, right? They might not say what everybody wants to hear. This is not Mayberry. As much as you think it is, it isn't. So we got to talk about the good and the bad and the ugly, everything that's there. It's an open conversation. And I like open dialogue. This is good that we're able to talk. And Mr. President, I mean, you brought, and I'm glad that you did. You know what I mean? I'm glad that you did. A few more things. Talked about that. Mr. DiGiuseppe, I like the idea of doing something big for the basketball courts, and maybe, I mean, you called me on it earlier. I would be willing to, you know, take out a loan or do something for recreation for the kids. I like what Bristol Township's doing, maybe not on that large of a scale, but I like what they're doing. It's a great thing for the borough. And I think that the tennis courts area that we call the tennis courts, there haven't been tennis courts there forever, but that would be a great central location. Because right now, everything that we do is only in one area. It's like when people go to Mill Street or they go to, you know, to the Wharf, or they're only going to one part of the town, right? And the town is a great town. Why not give them something to go into the middle of town, right? A great park, a central park there would be awesome. You got the canal, you have so much there to do. It would just be a great place for it. But, you know, I mean, I'm open for whatever though. Mr. Dillon, is there a way that we can do something? I know I talk about this on a regular basis, but the jungle that's on Garden Street that is going through those fences is horrible. I mean, it's horrible. And I know that our guys are busy cutting the grass or whatever, but I just have to think about, we pay somebody $12,000 a year, which comes to about, really, it's $2,000 a month for 6 months, to basically rake the dirt over at the baseball fields and line the fields. And our borough workers cut all that grass. Why can't we get whoever, you know, whoever has that job or whoever is taking care of those fields to cut the grass as well and use that, you know, that manpower to cut that jungle along Garden Street? Why can't we do that, Mr. Dillon? Mr. DiGiuseppe, could you ask Mr. Dillon that?
We'll put it on the agenda, see what we can do.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dillon. All right. Mr. Dillon,
Direct your questions to me.
no, it was good. You're just going to have to ask him. That's fine. Mr. DiGiuseppe, can you ask Mr. Dillon if he could, what kind of progress is he making with, I wanted to get a copy of the checks for the Recreation Board and the Sewer Authority for 2018.
Let me look at that and I'll get back to you.
Cool.
I do have a copy of the checks, by the way, and the monthly treasurer's report. I mean,
No, I want to see the actual checks. Yeah, I would like to see the actual, and now with the summer, I mean, if you're free, I can come over and, you know, go through it with one of the secretaries or you, whoever it is, you know, just to get it and make copies of it. Mr. Quattrochi, what I was asking you earlier, when it was brought up, when you're talking about, and I saw the emotion that was in you, right, talking about your mother-in-law. Now, that same emotion I felt, it's the same emotion. And I thought to myself, how would you feel, right, if somebody accused you of being the reason for that accidental death of your mother-in-law, how would you feel?
Tony,
I'm
there's
asking
no-
Mr. Quattrochi.
I don't want to, you're not asking him anything,
Okay, well,
okay?
it leads to something. Would you hire that person next month?
Move on.
Would you?
Has nothing to do with
Oh, it does.
Mr. Catroci.
Sure it does, because it's a human level. And Mr. Pezza was correct. We are on a different, we all know each other's backgrounds. We all know each other's families. We all know. So I want to know, when you look at things, when you're in other people's shoes, how do you feel? Because most people aren't able to look at things in other people's shoes. They only look at them through their lens. And I don't. I look at things through other people's shoes. Okay? And the last thing is, it's just comical to me, again, that now we're going to do all these things with Robert rules, and it sounds like censorship, and it all goes back to the same thing, okay? And I'm going to play it for you. No, this is the point. I'm going to play
Tony,
it for
I'm
you.
going to
Again,
stop the meeting.
tell me why. Tell me why you're stopping the meeting. This is my time. Why would you stop the meeting?
What's it pertaining to?
I'm going to let you listen to it.
No, find out what it is.
I don't do what he wants.
Just let it play. It's no big deal. We're just talking about why I believe that we're going to.
I think that renters, the people that own these landlords that are some of these rental permanent people. Move out. They're loading the sidewalk with an entire house full of furniture. It's not our trash company's responsibility to pick that trash up, because they're doing it because we don't want the town to look bad. But I think that we need to start getting a list of who's putting these, am I right, Tony? Yep. Who's putting the trash out, and start citing these people for what it's costing to pick them up. It's also guys that are contractors in this town that are doing jobs, and they're taking the trash home and putting it out in front of their house or their neighbor's house and things like that, which isn't fair. If you want to be in business, dispose the trash the right way. So I think Mascara needs to get some kind of a written letter from us saying that if you're picking this kind of trash up, building material, rental units that are emptying their trash on the sidewalk, there should be a fee involved for this. Because when we put our contract out for trash, it's based on tonnage. So at the end of the year, if they're picking up an extra 5,000 or 10,000 pound of trash in that next contract, it reflects that number. So I think we need to start cracking down on some of these contractors that are putting stuff out without dumpsters or taking it to the landfill, or landlords that are just emptying the stuff and putting it on the sidewalk.
Okay, so I agree with that, right? So this is in our own council president's own words. He's a contractor. He knows better. And what he did was he lied to everybody in the borough, and there are good people in this borough that will ignore it. For what reason? Now, these are people who were teachers. These are people who are good people, business owners. They want to do all these things that are right. They want to raise the bar to a different level and hold everybody accountable except our council president, and I do not understand why. I don't get it. It's a simple thing. If you want things to be if you want this to be a great town, okay? If you want this to be a great town, you do great things, and sometimes it's not easy when you got to tell somebody, right? When you got to tell somebody that what you're doing, you can't do that. You make us all look bad. You make us all look bad, because then I got to answer questions to people, and they don't want to answer. And I just have a feeling that that's what it is, because that's going to be a question that I'm going to ask every meeting, every month. And as a matter of fact, since we're all here and we're getting excited for the new in January, because we're going to have the town is just going to be full of cheerleaders, they don't want people to ask questions, then I'm going to be putting my hat back in the race. I mean, I'm going to put my name back in the hat for the race. I'm going to run as an independent in November for the North Ward Council. So we're going to have to spend some of that money that you guys raised. That $60,000 that you guys raised for the committee to secure Bristol's future, 60 grand was raised by that committee. 15,000 of it was from a Republican, Fitzpatrick. 15 grand into a small town Bristol Borough race. That's crazy. They raised close to 60,000. So I just want to be able to, they're going to have to use some of that money. Because I'm going to knock on every door, because I just think that there needs to be somebody here that's going to at least do some research, ask some questions. So, that's all. Thanks.
Okay. You have anything, Mr. Dillon? No. Go ahead, Ben.
I just wanted to reach out to Mr. Dillon, let you know tomorrow, but I have somebody complaining about an alley. It's a small alley, she's complained for a couple of months. And if we can send our crew over there to clean it up. It's a very small alley. I'll give you the address later on.
Okay, so we got 6 items to be discussed, right?
To accept the treasurer's reports, police reports.
We're going to add that we apply for this grant, correct? Okay. Mr. Fazio, you want to?
I know the public stage is over.
You can go to the podium. And if anybody else wants to speak, they can do the same thing.
This the next meeting, this the agenda meeting coming up?
Bill Pezza, Pond Street. I apologize for my appearance. I've not had the best week. I'm not feeling that great, and that's why I wasn't going to speak. But there is a point that I'd like to make, and since we're into this civility thing, let's stay with that for a minute. I work with a group of people called Raising the Bar, none of whom earn a dime for what they do for the town. They volunteer to run an art center. They volunteer to drive the River Runner just for fun, so when people come from out of town, they see it and they think it's just a nice thing. They volunteer to hang baskets, to hang flags. They raise all the money that they use to do those things. They're constantly just really good people who say, how can I get involved? And it's not just Raising the Bar. Mayor Saxon talked about the AOC. People like Amy McIlvain and people just come forward and say, I want to help the school district. How can I get involved? And they do. And they have movie nights, and they raise funds, and they do all kinds of wonderful things. It's not just them. It's the Little League. It's the fire department. It's people who step up and volunteer. And what really troubles me is when I hear, it's like the guy that goes to the doctor and says, I have cancer and I have a heart condition. And the doctor takes care of me, says, I got good news for you. We fixed your heart, we gave you a couple stents, and your heart's in good shape. And the guy walks down and says, yeah, but you didn't do a damn thing for my cancer. If you want to do something for this town, don't criticize the people who are already working around the clock to do things. Get up and do something. If you think there's too much concentration on the business district because a group of people said, let's revitalize our business district, then get up and do something for the part of town you want to do something for. There is nothing stopping a group of citizens from saying, let's do something at Grundy Park. Let's revitalize that. Let's do things in other parts of town. That's what volunteerism is about. And to sit home and get on Facebook and criticize the people who do step up, I find that very deplorable. I find it negative. I find it counterproductive. I don't understand it. Good people who don't have a political bone in their body walk around saying, what's that about? I'm driving a tram. I'm hanging a basket on Mill Street. I'm watering flowers. So I want to encourage people in town.
You want to do something for your neighborhood? Do it, by all means. If you want us to help you get started, ask us. But organize yourselves. Find like-minded people who want to do good things and do it. That's what everybody else does. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else on this side of the room want to speak again for public participation? Anybody on this side of the room want to speak on anything? All right, that ends public participation. So before we get started, since we discussed the fact of the hiring process, I want to put on the agenda for the manager to advertise for a borough inspector, street and highway employees, administrative secretaries, assistant zoning officer, an assistant bookkeeper, an assistant borough manager. Am I missing any positions? And I want to run that ad for the next 3 months. So if we have to hire somebody, we'll have names on file that we could pull
Are
from
we
that
still hiring
list.
part-time cops also?
That's constant. That's gonna, if you want to go that way, I would put that in crossing guards. And that's
Guards too? Crossing
substitute
guards?
crossing guards.
We keep advertising for crossing guards, nobody comes forward. And if you want to put some kind of thing in there, if they're interested in any borough position, please put an application in. This way here, from now on, we'll have a file of anybody that wants to be hired. We don't have to advertise because it costs a lot of money. We run an ad for 3 months, and we pull a name from that list. All right, so put that on the agenda too, to be voted on. All right, where do you want to start?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to accept the treasurer's report, the council meeting minutes from June 3rd and June 10th, to accept the treasurer's report for April, May, and June? I'm not sure. To accept the police and DJ's report for May and June, to accept the inspection department report for April, May, and June, to accept the public works department report for May and June, the fire chief's report from April, May, and June, and for the HARB report for 5/20/19 and 6/24/19.
Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Rodriguez. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Tony?
Do we need to suspend the rules, or no? Because,
No.
no, just going right into the, okay. That was my only question, I didn't know if we needed.
I'd like to make a motion to...
Wait a minute, we're
Go
going
ahead.
into the regular meeting to be voted on.
Okay, I didn't know if you had to take a break, just...
I mean, unless you guys want to take
No,
a break.
no, just curious.
That's why I did public participation again.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Thank you. Yeah.
So all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt an ordinance approving... No, I'm going to do this here. Adopt an ordinance to approve petition to vacate a portion of 7th Avenue and a portion of public alley adjacent to tax parcel 04-010-187, 188, and 189.
Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Gerard. Questions or comments? Mr. Devine?
Yeah, the only question I have, I mean, what are these, just paper streets that somebody's going to need to build something or something?
Mr. Salerno, you want to explain it?
This is the Bristol Pike land development that council approved last month and a month before. There's 3 parcels there where there was a repair shop was there.
Yeah.
And now it's taken down. No one knew this, but a crossing in between those 3 parcels was a paper street called 7th Avenue that went from Beaver Street, cut the corner and went to Route 13.
Gotcha.
It's about 100 feet. And there's an alley that separates two of those. Again, nobody knew about it, they're only on paper. So one of the conditions of the land development is the owner has to consolidate those 3 lots, and it makes sense to vacate that parcel, so now they own it. And of course, when it gets reassessed, the assessment's going to go up and it's going to increase the taxes. So it's just a vacation. We've done it before for other developments.
Okay, I was just wondering what it was. I went there looking for it.
You wouldn't
find 7th Avenue.
You wouldn't see it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 3.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize advertisement for amending responsible contractor ordinance.
Second. Second by Mr. Pezza. Questions or comments? Mr. Devine?
Yeah, why are we amending the responsible contractor ordinance? What is the reason for that?
Well, about 12 years ago, we adopted it, and we put a cap of $75,000 on it. And right now, as busy as people are, when we're going out to bid for projects, we're not getting competitive bidding because there's nobody out there that's looking to do $75,000 jobs. So we're going to raise that cap. I think the manager requesting $375.
Recommended you go to 375.
375. So that would give a lot of people the opportunity to start bidding these projects. So you'll get more competitive bidding.
Why would that matter? Isn't it just based on the job? Why would it matter if it's
You
75,000?
know what the responsible bid contract is?
I mean, just from, like a layman's point of view, I do, but not specifically. But if you want to explain it to me, I'm more than willing
The
to listen.
responsible bid contract has, you want to explain it, so I don't have to get involved?
So the ordinance, which most municipalities have, if you're over the threshold, the charge is $75,000, basically, it's going to require that unions bid for the job. The problem now is the unions are so busy that there's not many contractors that are going to bid on the smaller jobs like our ramps, which I think was two something. You have less bidders, the price is going to go up. So what a lot of municipalities have been doing, and ours is 12 years old, is they kind of just are going to raise that threshold that says if it's under the threshold, 375, it doesn't have to be union bidders. What that does is it brings more contractors in, more competitive, lower price. If it's a larger project over 375, like the wharf was, the docks, it's going to be union. So we're following what most municipalities find they have to do because we want the bids to be competitive and not artificially high.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? One more.
Opposed.
Opposed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead. You want to go? No. Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to authorize request for extension of 418-430 Jefferson Avenue Land Development, September 30th, 2019.
Second by Mr. Catroci. Questions or comments? Mr. Devine?
Yeah, can you give us an update on what they're doing over there? I would like to see or have an idea, what are they talking about doing over at St. Anne's, the school?
Amanda, I think you reviewed the latest plans that have been submitted.
So it is the old St. Anne's property that was purchased by a developer. They're proposing to redevelop the property into, I'll say, multi-family dwelling, whether they're apartments or condos, we're not sure of yet, and, do some exterior improvements as well.
Okay.
So the reason they're asking for the extension is because they're not prepared to submit anything to council yet.
Gotcha.
Correct, yeah, we did receive a resubmission from them that we're currently reviewing now, and they are, I believe, on the planning commission agenda for this month, so then at that point, once they go to planning commission, they'll come in
Have
front
an
of
idea,
council.
okay, thanks.
All right?
And it still involves tearing down the building that was the gymnasium.
Correct,
So
yeah,
it's-
they do.
They're going to take down part of that land development initially, that's not being changed.
Right,
They're
they're,
going to take down the garage, or the cafeteria and gymnasium and that newer addition, and that's going to be parking and egress for the project.
correct.
Any other questions or comments on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 5.
I'd like to make a motion to consider the current law proposal to amend wireless ordinance.
Second. Second by Mr. Catroci. Question or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Number 6.
President, I'd like to make a motion to submit Sam Scalzo's name for consideration for the zoning hearing board alternate member. Sam has served in the zoning board capacity before for 8 years. Very knowledgeable guy, looking to get involved in town, and I think he'd be a great choice.
Second by Mrs. Cullen. Any questions or comments?
I'd like to put up Mr. Patuska's name, a good builder and a really honest guy. So I'd like to recommend that we appoint Mark Patuska to that position.
I don't understand how to roll call vote. We have a motion. We have a motion on Scalzo. I guess it doesn't matter, all right?
I have a question. Is it only one position, or it's an alternate position?
It's an alternate position.
Can't we entertain 2 applicants? at
I
this
would
point?
like to, but I don't think by law we can because the zoning board consists of 3 members and 2 alternates.
There's already one alternate,
There's already one alternate.
I believe so.
I mean, I have no problem with Mr. Bartoska, but Mr. Scalzo has showed an interest in being put back on the board, and that's how Sally said, we really need somebody to fill in because there were some decisions that they couldn't get somebody there with vacation, so.
Is that a state, Bill, is that state law, or?
Is it a law, like a
Is it
state?
state
what is
law,
it?
or is it borough code, or?
I have to look. I don't know the answer to that.
And we,
I mean, I have no problem, Mr. Gerard, if you want to approve Sam, and if we could put Mr. Bartoska on or talk to the other alternate, I have no problem supporting him.
That'd be fine, thank you.
So if you want to,
So you're going to withdraw?
do you want to withdraw that, or?
Yeah, under those conditions, yes, that's fine. Yep.
I think he'd be
I
an
don't have any
I
problem
think
with
he'd be an asset to the zoning board.
Mark would be a good guy for that.
So we're down to a motion by Mr. Pezza, second by Ms. Cullen on Sam Scalzo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we have to
I'd
add that.
like to make a motion to suspend the rules.
It's on. It's on the
It's on now,
agenda, so
okay.
it doesn't
I'd
matter.
like to adopt a resolution for a multimodal transportation fund grant for $476,000 from the Commonwealth Financing Authority to be used for Mill Street and Rackler Street traffic improvements.
Second by Mrs. Rodriguez. Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Before we adjourn, do we need a motion to advertise for this help, or can you just do it on your own? Greg, you want to make?
Yeah. Can you give me the list again of the,
All all borough.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we advertise all available borough positions. To create a list of local veterans. For 3 months.
Second by Ms. Cullen. Questions or comments? Mr. Devine?
I just don't understand, is it just an open application for any position?
Advertise the positions.
But that's what I'm saying, but I just don't understand, like, if we're not hiring those positions.
No, we might be hiring.
I know we might, but that doesn't make any sense to me that we put out an open application.
Okay, then how do we compile a list when we need somebody and we have no list, and then?
Because
we're
you
gonna
figure out what it is that you're going to be hiring for, and then you put
It's
it out.
possible we hire all these positions.
But not likely.
No, I don't know about that.
But that's what I'm saying, that doesn't seem, I don't know, it just seems silly.
Can I make a comment? Why I think it does make sense is that one of the things we've been dealing with or struggling with is giving the borough manager the freedom to make decisions fast and cut through the red tape, which sometimes then I think makes it hard for us to select someone without going through a process. This way, if there is a decision that needs to be made in a relatively short term, we already have applicants on file, and then we can consider them accordingly. And, you know, I think it is incumbent upon people that want a job that look in the paper and decide if they want to apply for it.
And everybody at home that's watching the meeting could come and start filling out applications. Okay? So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Can I get a motion to adjourn? By Mr. Catroci, second by Ms. Rodriguez.